prepared for us to be sitting over here. Okay, so, okay. It's usually, I know, they're good. This is where the cabinet members usually sit, sit and they have to answer all the hot questions or whatever. So I now call the special meeting of the Board of Education to order at 6:02 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag is back here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I don't see Anthony. Let's coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Dixon, Mr. Rollins.
Here.
Mr. Scrivano.
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Here.
Mr. Siegel.
Here.
Mr. Connor.
Here.
With 5 present, 1 absent, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing that we're going to do tonight is to have the candidates introduce themselves, and they can have 2 minutes. Mrs. Fromm will be running the clock to help you with your time. And we will now, and I don't think Terry's here yet, is she? No. Oh, okay, all right. So, Mrs. Diana, I'll have you start then, okay? Diana Walker, you want to take 2 minutes to introduce yourself? Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, there it goes.
Oh, there it goes. I am Diana Rose Walker. I am a resident of Rockford. I am a retired National Public Radio journalist. I work extensively in the community. I have worked extensively in District 205 as a volunteer. At the present time, I work as a mentor for grade 3 pupils, girls, at Constance Lane Elementary School. And I work with the League of Women Voters in education, voter services, and also local government. Additionally, I am one of the founders of West Gateway Coalition, which is a viable neighborhood organization in West Rockford. And I volunteer for a myriad of organizations and events. And I don't know what else I can say other than that. I love to serve and am committed to education and love my community.
Thank you. And Roger Smith, I'll have you go next.
No, I can't get the button to go off.
Oh, there you go.
Welcome
Okay.
to our world.
There. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Roger Smith, and I am a husband, a father, a taxpayer, and currently an MBA student. What I'd like you to know about me specifically is that, number one, I am not a politician. I am here because I believe that every person in this community who has the skills to offer the board should be here. And the skills that I have to offer the board is my experience growing up where every single member of my family on my dad's side was a teacher and a school administrator. I myself went to university originally to be an educator, but seeing the fine people that were there looking for my own niche in the world, I ended up becoming, and still am, a licensed and practiced attorney for the state of Illinois. I took a $20,000 pay cut to be a child protection attorney because I had the stomach for the abuse and neglect courtroom. I currently work for Supply Corps doing contracts. What I do is stare across the table at the United States federal government, multi-billion-dollar national companies, and make sure that in negotiations that our interests are advanced and that they blink first. Which is probably the primary skill I'd like to bring to the board, is that in this room for Subdistrict G, I can make sure that the community values as well as the concerns are accounted for in the decisions that we make in the best interest of Rockford Public Schools. I can make sure that Springfield knows what we want and need and that we get it. I can make sure that Washington knows what we need and that we can get it. I have a familiarity with Lean and Six Sigma principles as far as financial stewardship goes. In assessing whether or not I would be a good fit, I did pull several years' worth of financial statements, and these are the magnitude of financial statements that I deal with at work on a daily basis. So as far as making decisions that affect the lives of children and these level of financial stewardship, I already have a decade of experience, and so I believe that it's my duty to be here. And I ran out of time. I'm sorry, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, June?
My name is June Stanford, and I was born and raised in Rockford. I went all through public school here. I graduated from Auburn High School, a gifted academy. I went to college in Missouri, a small private school. I earned a bachelor's degree in mathematics from that school. Soon after college, I went to work for Kelly Williamson Company. I've been there ever since. It'll be 29 years in September that I've been there. Steadily moved up in the accounting department. I am the controller and have been for 19 years. I am a single mother of a son who will be a sophomore in Auburn's CAPA program next fall. I am a proud supporter of Rockford Public Schools. I have had good experiences and am eager to see what the opportunity leads.
Thank you. Welcome, Terry. We're doing the 2-minute introduction, so if you'll take 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to interview yourself. There you go. Thank you.
I'm a single mother of a young man who just happens to be autistic, and he was diagnosed with a high-frequency hearing loss when he was 3 years old, and I put him into the public school system full-time at that time. And over the years, we found out other difficulties, communication disorders. We had also abilities with motor skills, etc. But this experience led me to, one, work closely with the school systems. I learned to work closely with teachers and administration alike. You know, my background is a very simple background. I've got a degree in chemical engineering and a degree in biology. And over the years, I switched. When he was like 7 years old, I decided to go into another field, financial services. And that was so I can spend more time with my son, which I was able to do so. But through that experience, I learned fiscal management, and I learned working with family with financial constraints. So I understand that. Now, when I was working with the public schools, I found out that children that are different have problems in the system. I don't care what public school system it is, they have challenges. But his background is no different than other children who are different. And these differences might be as simple as the family they grew up, the family situation. Also, they might be their skin color, whatever. All of these people have differences in socioeconomic background, and we can't put children in X boxes and Y boxes. And this is why I became an advocate for my son, as well as other students. I became heavily involved in local school systems. I was in the Chicago local councils. I was voted to 2 different schools. So I am familiar with the management and the fiscal constraints in schools. Also, I have been working in community organizations for years. And therefore, I am very happy to submit my name for consideration as a candidate
Thank you.
for the public school system.
So instructions real quick to the board members. You may use one of the questions on here when it's your turn. And each candidate will get a chance to answer your question. We'll start with a different person each time so that not one person gets stuck answering first all the time or last all the time or whatever. Or you may use one of your own questions. So Mr. Rollins, I'm going to have you start, and Roger, I'm going to have you answer first, and then we'll go that way, and then Diana will be last, okay?
Okay, I guess my question is, what do you think the biggest challenges are that face the school district right now?
In my humble opinion, the problem with Rockford Public Schools isn't so much Rockford Public Schools, it's what people have been led to believe about Rockford Public Schools. Part of the reason I'm here today is because I find it almost physically painful when people put down our schools within our own community. Having looked at the Illinois State Report Card, the budget and the strategic plan, what I'm here to tell you is that whatever you think about Rockford Public Schools, when you crunch the numbers, account for the externalities, and account for the actual reality of the students in Rockford, that we are a good school district looking to become great.
June, we'll go this way. June, you want to go next? Same question, yeah.
Well, according to last night's meeting, I think we have some achievement issues to deal with. And also, like he said, the public perspective does matter. I mean, this is a public school system, and that's something that we should probably work on. I think that, though, as far as our students are concerned, our achievement should be number one, and where they fall within national standards should be important.
Terry?
There is a few things that are going on. First of all, the board has done wonderful jobs over the last few years, going to new techniques with the students, and it's very promising to see a school board that does that, but there's still some work to be done. For instance, I do know there is trauma situations going on into our schools that have not yet to be addressed. And I have seen what other school systems have done. I know it's a new thing with all school systems, but it's something that has to be addressed because students that have, like maybe even the night before, seen a violence in their family, their brain does not work the same way. They cannot learn. They're basically traumatized. And we need a system for them and also for long term, because we found out, or the evidence has found out, that these students are the ones that act out the most. And talking about acting out and discipline, I've been reviewing different school systems and how schools have been looking at discipline. And, you know, all these children, some of them, they appear like really tough because of situations they've been in, but they're just children. And sometimes we give them adult like punishment, and they're really children. But other schools have tried other things that I think we should look into. Things like, I know this is very strange, but yoga. Yoga has able to calm the kids down. Instead of telling them to go to a separate classroom or to go home, they're able to go and decompress themselves and get better situation that they can learn. And then just in that in itself, I mean, we do have to look at discipline, maybe do more in-school discipline or instead of a suspension, because when a child comes from maybe a violent home or in a situation, sending them home does not get the results we want. And schools that have tried in-school discipline have found, or suspension, has found that their attendances went up, their truancies went down, and their situations decreased.
Okay, Terry, thank you. Diana?
The problems that's facing the Rockford Public School is what's facing schools across the country. What we see in the schools is a microcosm or a reflection of what we see in the community, in our community. The disintegration of families and the breakdown of personalities. And that when I say that is that children come to school and they come from different backgrounds. I work at a school that has 17 different nationalities. Some of those kids come from refugee families. They come to school with different problems, and yet we want them to come to school, be prepared to learn, and sit in the classroom and get out your pencil and paper and be attentive. If a child has to deal with a myriad of problems before they get to school, that's not going to happen. And unfortunately, we expect the teachers and the school district to deal with those other problems that children have. Some way we have to get partnerships, because I don't think that needs to be the role of the schools. The role of the schools needs to be to educate, but somehow we still have to address what else is problems that the children have, because until we address those other problems that the children have, they're not going to be as successful. We can work and work and work and say we want to lessen the achievement gap. We want to do this. We want to raise the test scores. But until we address the core problem, what is the child has, that's not going to happen. And I think that if we find partnerships in the community that address those other problems, whether it's poverty, whether it's social emotional, whether it's counseling, whatever it is, to address that and ease that burden on the schools so that the child, when they come, they are prepared to be attentive and to be prepared to be a high achiever in the school. Because I believe that every child can learn, but not if they have to deal with all this other trauma and other things that they have to do. Because sometimes if a child comes to school hungry, if a child comes to school where they've had to take care of their siblings and work and do all this other stuff before they come to school, they cannot be expected to sit there and be attentive and do their homework. So I think that's one of I think that's a major thing that we need to address. And the school's core function is to educate and not be a social worker, not to be a disciplinarian, and all of those other things, is to educate. But until we address all of the other issues that children have today in our society, we are not going to be successful in our goal of educating all children.
Thank you. Ms. McCulloch, you can go next, and June's going to be first, okay?
So I'd like for you to describe for me a time
Can you
when there
turn
was...
your mic on there, June?
Okay.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
I'd like for you to describe for me a time when you were on a team and there was some sort of conflict or disagreement, and give me a specific, and tell me how you resolved it and how the team resolved it.
Well, that's tough. I guess I would go back to my work experience. I work in a relatively small accounting department. We recently, within the last few years, implemented new software for our entire corporation, which is quite an undertaking. My boss and I pretty much were the ones that set up the new system and got it all running. I learned how to run all of the modules and then trained each person in the specific department. As far as conflict goes, I suppose there really wasn't a whole lot. It's just the difficulties that come along with that, and people don't like change. And I can tell you that our people didn't really want to change, and that's not always easy to deal with. But as long as you educate them and show them, that it's okay, and this might actually be easier for you in the long run, they eventually come aboard. So it did work out all in the end.
Okay, Terry?
Well, there's quite a few areas where I've run into conflict. I guess that's one area that I do seem to do well in, not making the conflict, of course, but working with the conflict. I know one situation in general was a community challenge. I worked a lot with the neighborhood communities, et cetera, and there was a situation where the tempers were getting out of hand. Whose fault was it? We had some gunfire in the area, and some people said we can't have people report to the police because then the perpetrators will go after them. There was another one that we have to report everything, and it was just a conflict where people had differing views. And one thing I understand with differing views is the most important thing is to hear everyone out and find out where they're coming from. Why did they have those views? Why did they think those are important? And by doing that, I found out that we could actually go through and discuss the real things behind it, not the A and B, but rather what's behind it. And we were very successful of coming up with a program where we actually put out flyers to every household that we were putting we were calling out crime, that if something happens, we're reporting it. And everyone agreed at the end that we had to report everything, because one of the areas we went is there you can call the police, and there are certain lines that they do not take all your name and addresses. So it's the bottom line, hearing them out, finding out what's behind the situation, and then discussing how we can alleviate the challenge, and then going forward and making those changes.
Thank you, Terry. Diana?
The most recent example that I can think of was in an organizational leadership program where we had a project. It was a team project where we had to assess a failing business, and what we had to do is go out to the business, interview the employees, and observe the business in action, and all team members were supposed to go. There was 4 people on the team, 3 members came, and we went there on 3 different occasions, and only 3 members came. And then we were getting together, writing up the notes. There was still 3 members that came. And 2 of the other members said, well, this isn't fair. Why are we doing the work? And the other person, and our grade was dependent on the work. But the professor really wouldn't have known that the other person wasn't doing anything unless one of us had said something. So, but there was discontent because the 4th person wasn't there. So as we were gathering the research and writing up things, that we were trying to decide what we're going to do. And I said, well, we need to just talk to the person and find out why they didn't show up, and tell them that we don't think it's fair that they should be able to get an equal grade if they were going to work on the project. And then when we talked to the person, we found out there was a legitimate reason, but she was, reluctant to tell us what it was. It was a personal problem. And so then we did work out a schedule so we could go at a time that was convenient for her because she had small children. And so it worked out in the end fine. But it was a situation that if we had just gone ahead and turned the paper in and not included her in it, then she would have had a failing grade because she wouldn't have contributed to it, and we wouldn't have discovered what the actual problem was, why she wasn't, and just assumed that she didn't want to be in it or she was just being lazy when that wasn't the problem. So I think it was a good lesson to learn. Just don't always assume what you see is what really is going on. Try to figure it out and see what's really beneath the surface and get to the crux of what the problem is.
Thank you, Dana. Roger.
Before my specific example, by way of background, I have 16 siblings, and so conflict resolution is...
Oh, really? Whoa.
Some of them were through adoption, I will give you that,
Okay.
but that doesn't make them less siblings. It doesn't make the conflict any less real.
Maybe even more so.
So I'd like to tell you a story about our first week in law school. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a movie where on the first day of law school, the professor says, look to your left, look to your right, one of you won't be here this time next year. That's the fear that permeates that portion of my education. But the goal is still to be educated and to be the best that you can be. And you can't do that alone. And so what growing up with that many brothers and sisters has taught me is that you have to be willing to connect, and you can pronounce that listen. You need to be willing to be vulnerable and have the strength to be vulnerable, and not allow the times that you've been hurt or the times that you've been wronged to cloud yourself moving forward. So recognizing that in law school, I attempted to put a study group together, except people were afraid of making their competition better because that didn't that increase the chance of leaving law school with $50,000 in debt and nothing to show for it. But you can't focus on the fear, and you can't be afraid to open yourself up. And so the position that I advocated was that's going to be true no matter what. So why don't we focus on making ourselves the best that we can be? And hopefully the rest will fall into place, and thankfully it did. So you need to listen to concerns as well as goals. You need to clearly communicate your own concerns and your own goals, and then work on that trust connection. Somewhere as a society, we decided that negotiations were a zero-sum game with a winner and a loser, and it doesn't have to be that way. And that it was some sort of game where you had to ask for more than you needed or wanted, and then the other side would ask for more than they needed or wanted, and then you'd fight about it for 6 months and then eventually come to a conclusion. But if you start openly and honestly and forge those connections, set your ego aside and give a little bit of yourself up. Conflict resolution is generally the same in almost all cases, on a micro scale. I'm not talking about global conflicts, but, and I think you can see that reflected, and I think we all generally said the same thing, that you have to. And sometimes you get hurt, sometimes you get burned. Next person shouldn't pay for it.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel, next question, and Terry, you will start with this one.
Before my question, I want to thank you for putting yourselves forward to occupy this seat. This is a significant investment in your energy, your attention, and your time. On Friday afternoons, we get an agenda that can be anywhere from a big novel to several big novels that has to be digested by a Tuesday night. So that can be a significant challenge, but you only have to do that 3 times a month, and you're compensated with a box lunch. So I appreciate your willingness to...
And water.
And water.
Okay.
Or whatever, yeah. Right. So I appreciate your willingness to serve. My question is, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
Terry, you get to go first.
Excellent. Well, the role of a school board member actually is to work with the other people on the school board, and there's a myriad of things they're responsible. First of all, they are there to look over all the rules and policies of the school, and this is all done in relation to the schools achieving their academic excellency. And this comes from everything from working on the financial background of the schools, the budgets, to working on the classroom. The curriculums have to be approved, books have to be approved, any new expenses have to be approved. There's also contract negotiations that have to be worked out. There's also employment problems, discipline to children discipline. There's quite a few. It comes down to about everything, except we have to remember that it's the overall. We're not there to look at the minuscule, like who's spending the most on pencils, although financial is very important. But everything has to be done in accordance to meeting the achievements, the educational achievements is what it comes down to.
Thank you, Terry. Diana? You are, okay. You can, and if you want the question repeated, that's fine. Right, yep.
Well, two of I think the most crucial components of a school board member are collaboration and accountability. Accountability to our employers, and that's the taxpayers. We're the largest taxing body in the district, and a large portion of our employers do not have children in the school district. I hear that all the time, and they tell me that. Why should they be concerned about the school district? Because they're just doing this and that with the money. So accountability and collaboration with your fellow board members. When I say accountability, I mean fiscally, making sure that the money that we're entrusted with is used wisely and used in a way that it's solely for the education of the children and not in frivolous manners, and working collaboratively with the board members on a mission and a goal that's focused around educating children. I think that's the role of a government member. And really just serving. You have to have a servant attitude, because this is a non-paid position. And if you don't have a servant attitude, you might as well not have applied for this, because you're not going to be compensated if you don't have that servant attitude and being willing to serve others. I think that's basically how I feel that the role of a board member is.
Thank you, Diana. Roger?
I'd like the board and those assembled to keep in mind the skill set that I promised to bring, because I'd like to focus on the next 2 years specifically as the role of a board member in Rockford, because I don't care about boards in other places. What we have on our plate coming up is the expiration of the current 5-year plan. And as I had said, Lean, Six Sigma, continuous improvement initiatives at work is the decisions we're going to have to make that are going to determine the next 5 years. And you may have been shocked when I said in my opening that I believe that we're a good school district looking to become great. And I'd like to point out how much Rockford, over the last couple of years, has decided to believe in itself. I used to watch people show up for On the Waterfront when I was there. I watched them show up to City Market, the Fred Van Fleet watch party. And we exist currently thankfully at the end of that 5-year plan, with the teacher contract negotiations looming on the horizon, in a community that's ready and willing to accept that vision of the Rockford Public School District as an excellent and exemplary school district. And as I had said earlier, I'd crunched the numbers, and when you account for externalities, what I had expected to see, Rockford Public Schools were outperforming what I would have expected to see. And so the role of the school board member there is going to be, one, my role is to take the concerns and shared values of Subdistrict G and make sure that every one of you understands their concerns. And then my role will be to listen to every one of your subdistrict's concerns and values, and make sure that, taking them all into account, that we make the best decisions with the information available from the perspective of the taxpayer, the teachers, the students, the administration, and the community. I think it's a beyond important role, so I would also like to thank everybody. I don't know about them, but I used to be a Boy Scout camp counselor, and at least this room's air conditioned, and there are fewer bugs. And I agree wholeheartedly with that servant mentality. It's the skills that I believe that I will bring for the financial stewardship for the taxpayer, the sympathetic family life growing up with the administration side of my family and the teacher side of my family, and knowing that it's difficult to build trust and negotiate when you're afraid for your own family with all of the sacrifice. Am I done now?
No, I was...
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So I do want to wrap it up. So box lunch sounds great. And it's the advocacy portion that I think really drove me to be here. And I'll repeat it early, I'll repeat it often. Springfield, Washington. On rare occasions, I'd even be willing to set foot in St. Louis if that's what it took to communicate clearly and concisely. And I would like to toss out, as I had mentioned, the number crunching, the analytical mind to drive improvement. We're going to be evaluating the 5-year plan, and we'll be evaluating the next 5-year plan every year. And nobody likes to look at spreadsheets, but that's what I do. Nobody likes to read 300-page contracts all day, every day, but that's what I do. So from what I'm hearing, I think any one of us would be an excellent candidate. And I am here not as a politician because I want to be mayor someday. I'm here because the skills I have to offer, I think, will benefit the short-term tactical 2 years, and then as long as the people will have me in perpetuity.
Thank you. You?
Really, I see the role as a board member twofold. One is to have the interest of the student at heart. The whole reason we're here is for the students, for them to learn, for them to excel, for them to grow socially, intellectually, and we are here to make that happen. With that said, the second portion is the business side of what we do, and that is to make the decisions that affect the students and what is offered to them at our schools and what opportunities they have there. But the business side of it, of course, has to be addressed, and that's an issue. So the board member really has two things in mind, the kids and the business side.
Okay. Mr. Connor, you're next, and I think Roger's first.
Well, mine's a two-parter, and there is, from my point of view, a reality that you are elected officials. So assuming you'll run, first question is, how will you get elected? What steps will you take? And number two, how will you approach your constituents when it's obvious you and they totally disagree on approach? So two-parter, one is what steps would you do to get elected? And two is, what approach do you take with constituents where clearly they totally disagree with you?
I think that that's the same question. As far as steps to get elected, sound evidence-based decision-making that takes into account Subdistrict G to all of you and all of your concerns, to me back to the sub-district. And I think it's absolutely dealing with constituents. You're going to hear me probably harp on it all night. Rockford is a good public school system, and I'm going to approach my constituents with as much evidence as I can on the way that things are improving, the challenges remaining, the resources required, and make sure that they're heard. My entire conflict resolution story came down to vulnerability and connection. They may disagree. That's going to happen. But as long as they feel heard, I think that they will feel that as an elected official that I am responsible and accountable. I think I had heard several people mention that, as you had said, getting paid in smiles, that this isn't the kind of job that would be for everybody. And maybe there is that scapegoat aspect. But as long as you listen to understand and not listen to respond, as long as you're willing to work collaboratively and not for your ego, the have to admit steps to get elected part is the part that I'm least interested in, because I'm not always comfortable talking about myself. But to anyone who will listen, I would like to talk about the progress being made by the exemplary teachers, students, and community members that interact with RPS 205 every single day. And I can promise you that at the end of the next 5-year plan, they're going to believe me.
June?
Well, I'm certainly not a politician. I'm an accountant. So getting elected, that's something foreign to me, but I am willing to learn any skills I need. One thing that pops in mind is visiting the schools in my sub-district, getting to know the administrations there, going to parent meetings, getting to know parents, letting them know me, listening to their concerns. That's what comes to mind for me in terms of getting elected. As far as constituents that don't agree with my position on something, like Roger said, if you listen to them, you let them know that you are hearing them, that you understand where they're coming from, maybe they'll change my mind. Who knows? You have to still be open to discussion with parents and administrators and everyone involved, because we all have the children in their best interest at heart.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Can you clarify the second portion? Because it seems like everyone's answering the first one of the question.
What part would you like clarified?
Just what the second part of the question was. I know the first one.
Restate it?
Yes, please.
How would you approach constituent that clearly disagreed with you?
Okay. First of all, as far as getting elected, I was looking at this particular 18 months is to come on board and fill a vacancy, taking my skills and putting them to work. I have not looked forward towards doing this for another time frame, but I wanted to do what was right now. So as far as being elected, that's not at the top of my list. However, if I was to go forward with that, I would do what I'm doing now, working directly in the community. I'm very much a grassroots worker. I'm in the community. I talk to the people in the community. Our community works in different schools in subgroup G, and it's interesting all the challenges they're having with being bused from one area, and there might be a school that's within 2 miles of them, 1.5 miles, and their child is going to 4 miles. So I hear all these all the time because of my involvement in the community. I do forums for things like violence. I work with helping people get better paying jobs. So I'm there with the parents and with the children. I have done helping low-income people get assistance in getting homes, which is important to people in the low-income areas. And I guess I would continue to work in the community, because if we know and we listen to the community, the second part of the question, and that's what I wanted to get that, I guess, clarified or heard again, hearing out constituents is so much, I guess it's easier, as I guess I'm pointing out, is because when we're working with them directly on things that affect their everyday life, one, they're going to be open, receptive to, hey, this is not a person who is working from up above. They're a person. They're one of us. And by looking at myself as one of them, they're more willing to talk, and they know that it's coming from my heart. And I've always worked that way. I do what's coming from my heart, but I also look in a balanced situation. There's two sides of a coin, and you got to balance it out. Going back to one of our initial questions is hearing everybody out, and then finding out why they believe in what they believe in, because there's a reason. There is definitely a reason.
Thank you, Terry.
So I hope that answered the question.
Diana?
Just so I understand it is, how will you get elected, and what steps would you take for constituents that don't agree with you? How will I get elected? I've canvassed for, I don't know how many candidates, so I'm pretty adept at canvassing, going out and meeting people in door to door. Not only just going to the schools and meeting the parents, but the stakeholders that don't have children in school, you also have to contact those people because they don't have contacts with the schools. They don't have children in the schools. And so you have to really make sure that they're involved in it too. So going out and canvassing and talking to people in those District G. And how would I talk to people who disagree with me? By listening. Even though a person disagrees with me, somewhere in the conversation, there's some reason that they're disagreeing with you. And if you listen long enough, you're going to find out why they're disagreeing with you. And somewhere in there, you'll find out the core reason of that. And then that'll give you, not necessarily ammunition, but that will give you leverage to maybe talk to them and find out, or give them information that will address what their core concern is on their disagreement with you. They may not, at the end of the conversation, they still may not agree with you, but they may come to a point where they would understand why you've taken the position that you have. Because as an elected person, you're not going to have agreement with everybody that is in your district. That's never going to happen. But at least if you can get them to understand why you made the decision that you made, that's the most important thing. If you can get them to understand why you made the decision, not just, oh, I made the decision. No, get them to understand why you made it. I think that's the most important part, if they disagree with you. And don't stand with it. Listen to what they have to say, even if they get vocal and volatile and shouting, or just be calm and listen to what they have to say. And at the end of the day, explain to them calmly why you made the decision, give them the evidence behind that. And that at the end of it, they still may disagree with you, but at least they have the information of why you made the decision. I think that's the most important part. I think people get upset when they don't have information.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon, you're next, and June, you get to start.
I want to echo what some of the other board members have said. Thank you for applying for the position, because at times it is thankless. And we do receive a package on Friday, and make sure that you read it, because it may be something that, give it a second effort, because that second effort may be something that you read that may change the results when you vote. So my question is, what grade would you give the school board and why?
That's a loaded question.
Okay, June.
Well, gosh. My son being in the CAPA program, I have been lucky enough to see that special program at work. He started in the 6th grade at West and is now going to be in 10th grade. So in grade school, my son struggled. He is ADHD, and the regimented classroom does not work for him. It's very hard for him to sit and look at a piece of paper or listen to a teacher talk for more than 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time. When we got to West, the core curriculum teachers are Kappa teachers. So they're singing in English class. They're making art projects in their social studies class. And they're up and around and they're moving and they're dancing in classes, and he's learning and he's enjoying it, and I'm not having to threaten him to get on the bus in the morning. He's enjoying it. It's geared towards him, and I have been so lucky for the last 4 or 5 years that it's changed for him, and for that I applaud you. I mean, it's a great program, and I'm thankful that we have it. So I would give you an A+ on that.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Okay, I'm going to let you know right up front, I'm not an easy grader.
Okay.
But my grade would be C+. And I say that because the school board, things that have been accomplished. I mean, I understand we now, I'm assuming that has been approved, the person who is going to be getting more Hispanic employees. Has that been approved? No?
Not sure what
Okay, in HR. A person from Beloit was supposed to come get involved, and so that we can have more people with color and more people that.
Diversity recruiter.
Yes.
There you go, okay.
And that was very good, because one thing I do know with the children is things that are pointed out to me all the time, is that when they can see people like themselves, they're more apt to go on to be a teacher. But when students just see people that are not like themselves, they think that's a thing that those people do. So I guess, that's where improvement, but there's a lot of other good things that are going on like that. Also, things like the mentoring program for teachers. Sometimes it gets a little difficult when they're getting mentored too much, and they're putting too much outside the classroom. Things like helping students with special education needs and getting them the equipment they need. We've got to work a little bit more on that. I know that is such a difficult area, and especially where there is like 26, I think, openings right now in special ed, and that's probably the highest area openings. So we have to look at that. And also going to the schools that are bringing out those people. We're in an area that not necessarily everybody wants to work in. It's more urban. But if we can get to the students, and I know that there's actually groups that are doing that, but once again, I heard groups that were ready to graduate that are in the circumference of our school. They said, no, nobody did show up from Rockford Public Schools to see if any of us were looking. So I guess there's some accomplishments that are going on, but then there's area for improvement. And one thing you'll find out about me, I'm like all about the people. I know that a few of you have been saying about the hard work, big packets. I come from a background, I think I mentioned that I've got an engineering degree, biology degree, and I did work with environmental regulations. I worked very closely with the state and federal governments, and so I was very, very, very used to working at the details, because a regulation, you have to look at the specifics. And if you don't, you can miss quite a few things. So, and I am not afraid of hard work. Anybody that knows me, I go up and beyond working in the community doing that. So,
Thank you. Okay. Diana?
I'm going to give you a higher grade because I am passionate about early childhood education. So you get a B-. I loved it, love it, love it, what's doing there. Some of your pluses, professional development, the teaching teachers, or like I said, early childhood, the business collaboration with the businesses in the community partnerships, and the volunteers. So those are pluses. So you get a B minus, but there's a lot of work to do. And I really have to commend you. It's a volunteer position, yet you work diligently. The major thing that I commend you on is that you've taken the school district off the front page. There's not as much, I work extensively in the community, and there's not as much negative feedback about the school board as has been in the past. There's still complaints about the schools, but not to the degree that has been in the past. So that's a plus. So, like I said, there's still work. Commend you on what you've done, and keep moving forward. And you, as far as I'm concerned, you can back up that early childhood and go to birth. You know, have a partnership with somebody like Crusader Clinic and just partner with them. And I got some ideas for that when I get selected as a school board member. So we can talk about that later. Thank you.
Hey, Roger.
That's a big question. Let's start with you. Just wave your hand and I'll stop talking because we only have the 18 minutes left.
Okay.
In grading, I was always more of a coach than a traditional educator. And what I demanded, hockey, if you're wondering what sport, of my players is that you will be the best on the ice for the first and the last 2 minutes of every period. The stuff in the middle matters, but that is where games are going to be won and lost. So my question for you guys is, when you're looking for a grade, do you believe that this budget and this 5-year plan is your best work? Do you make your decisions with at the forefront of your mind that I'm going to consciously choose kindness? Do you feel that you are making decisions on getting reelected or decisions on, even though you're going to catch for it, that it's because you have the best interest of the children at heart? I do love the question about how would you get reelected, because stability is important. I've heard it for Park District commissioners. I've heard it when I told people that I was submitting my name. Oh, that's a good start. You can run for the county board after that. I don't want to be on the county board. I don't want to be president. I want to offer my skills to the Rockford public school system and the community because of my experience, my background, and my education. And I get the feeling that that's why everybody else is here. So thank you. Keeping those things in the forefront of your mind. It's difficult, it's volunteer, it's long, it's hard. Have you ever shied away from a decision because it's tough to make decisions that affect so many children that you'll never even meet? Have you shied away from making a decision confidently and boldly because of the magnitude of the financials involved? Once you have the answer to all those questions, I think you guys know whether you pass or fail. And for what it's worth, I think that whatever you decide is what we're going to stick on the fridge. That being said, let's look at the reports. The 5-year plan. It's ambitious, and it doesn't shy away from the realities of the challenges. And most importantly, I think it's not afraid to fail. We didn't set out a 5-year plan that we know in 5 years we're going to meet, because that's the graduation rate in Alabama. Sure, they're the #1 in the country, but is their education working? I don't know. I don't live in Alabama. What I can say is that the 5-year plan, there are goals we know we aren't going to meet, but that isn't an excuse not to try. And I think as long as we're driving continuous improvement, as long as what we're concerned with is being a better school district tomorrow than we were today, the grades don't matter.
Okay, thank you. So I'm next, I think. Okay. And Terry, you get to go first. Okay. Okay. So I think this is an easy one. We'll see.
Oh, good.
When you're done serving as a school board member, and I've thought about this as well, you know, what will be your legacy for serving on the school board? When you're all done and you walk away, what is it you hope your legacy will be as a school board member? Terry?
Okay. My legacy. I would like to see my legacy as bringing to the school board a person who has a pulse on the community, who actually sees the community in front of them when they're making decisions. And I do know that every decision is not easy, but having one where people understand that there is someone rooting for them in their backyard, helping them get to where they are. And like I said, it's someone that is from the deep roots of the community. I think that would be my biggest accomplishment to see.
Great, thank you. Diana?
I would like my legacy to be that I was a fearless advocate for children. I am passionate about education, passionate about the fact that I believe there isn't one child that cannot learn. They may have barriers, but all children can learn. So that's what I want my legacy to be, that I fought passionately and fiercely to get across that all children can learn and all children can be educated, and that should be the role of public education, and I want that to be my legacy.
Thank you. Roger?
I appreciate the question. I don't have an answer for you because I haven't thought about what I'd like my legacy to be, because I don't care, I suppose. I care about children, I think, as evidenced by my background, and whether or not children know I was in any way responsible for their success is not even in the backseat. It's not even in the same car as the things that I think are important. You've heard my answers. I think dealing with the constituents there, I would have an excellent chance at re-election as an incumbent. But that's not what I want to think about. I want to think positively that we don't have problems. We have challenges to overcome that we can and will overcome collaboratively through open, honest communication, that we can have a deal in place for long-term stability with the teachers and the paraprofessionals and all the unions, that our 5-year plan sits on a shelf because we're so successful at it that no one even needs to look at it, because we live it and we breathe it, and it informs everything that we do at home, in public, and at school. I don't care if anyone knows that I had anything to do with that. I really, I don't. I suppose what I'd like my legacy to be is that when you've done everything right, no one really is concerned whether you've done anything at all.
Okay, thank you. June?
I think what comes to mind for me as far as a legacy would be that my constituents know me, that they recognize me. Oh, yeah, she's our school board representative from our district. She was at our PTO meeting. She listened to what I said. She took notes, you know. That they recognize that, you know, I'm out there and they can talk to me and I will listen to their concerns and bring them back to the board and you know, listen and try to do something about whatever their concerns are.
Okay, thank you. We have time for maybe 2 more questions. So does somebody have any board member have another question they'd like to ask? Mr. Rollins? Okay.
I'm going to ask a question that's hopefully longer than the answer. Because
and Diana, you get to go first. Okay.
this is really, it occurs to me, and there's been some comments about it, about the time commitment, that you don't really know what the time commitment is, or you may not know what the time commitment is. So let's just tell you what the time commitment is. So there is a board meeting twice a month on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. It starts at 5 o'clock sharp in closed session. We spend 2 hours in closed session, then we go into open session. That open session can last, on the very best nights, an hour, hour and a half. And last night we ran until about 9:30, 9:45. When I first got on the board, when we were on the front page of the paper, we were running until 11 or 12. Hopefully we never get back to those days. But when there are things, that people are excited about and they come up and we have long public comment periods, that can happen. We have a committee of the whole meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, beginning at 5:30, and you can come and grab a slice of pizza in the back before that meeting starts. For the board meetings, and you may have thought that Mr. Siegel was making a joke about the novels, everything's online now. It gets posted online at sometime Friday afternoon. I'm still old-fashioned. I asked them to give me the paper copies. So for this past Tuesday's board meeting, I got 2 4-ring binders stuffed with paper. You're probably talking about 600 pages of paper that I was expected to digest and be able to ask questions about Tuesday night. It's not always 2 binders. Sometimes it's down to 1 binder, but that's the volume. And we're not a big board. And we notice it when people are gone, or it affects the board dynamics. It affects our ability to operate. And everybody up here has a pretty good attendance record. I've been on now over 8 years. I know I've missed twice. I think I might have missed 3 times in that period of time. Mr. Siegel just missed his first meeting in 3.5 years. That's kind of the minimum time commitment. Then we have ad hoc committees. There's been discussion about strategic planning. We've got a strategic planning process coming up. There will be an ad hoc committee for strategic planning. We'll have facilities committees. We'll have various other ad hoc committees. And then by being a member of this body, you are representing people. And people, guess what? People want to talk to you. So there is an additional time commitment of making sure that you make yourself available to people to talk to and discuss board business. And you'll have discussions with the administration. You want to spend time talking to the administration about things. You may want to have one-on-ones with board members. We'll get together for coffee occasionally, one-on-one. So I'm just going to ask the question. I'm not trying to scare anybody off, but all of us other than Mr. Scrivano have full-time jobs. He's retired. He's fortunate. He had a full-time job. He retired.
It's 43 years.
We all have families. I'll tell you, when I first got on the board, I dropped a bunch of other commitments that I had. I was involved in other community organizations. I dropped them because that was not going to work. Are you prepared to make the commitment to this organization if you get selected?
So Diana, you get to go first. Okay.
I looked at the time commitment because I knew a board member before this, and I knew the amount of work that she did, and I know a current two of the current board members, so I do know the time commitment that's involved in it. And I prayed about it before I took it, even though a number of people kept saying, oh, we want you to apply, we want you to apply. Well, those people, they wanted me to do this, but I said, I'm the one that's got to commit the time, even though you want me to do this. So I did pray about it, and I am willing to put in the time that is required for it. And I looked at my list. I'm looking at my list of commitments, and each one of the organizations that I'm involved in is the only major one that would have been major is over now, and that was Transform Rockford. That was the Ed spoke. But that work is done, and the other 2 organizations that I'm involved in, that's minimal work, and it's once a month. So I do have the time. I don't have any small children. I don't have grandchildren. My mentoring at Constance Lane Elementary is once a week with the grade 3, and that's for 2 hours. So I can do it, and I'm willing to do it.
Thank you. Roger?
How could you not? I think it's clear that I'm here out of a sense of civic duty, and I think everybody's here, and I think that there should be more people up here. Because if you can, shouldn't you be obligated to? It's the cornerstone of our societal values. It's the conduit that we pass down who we are to the people who will replace us. We have exemplary teachers who make pay sacrifices and sacrifices with their families to be here, to deal with the criticism and to do the best job that we can. You guys have all given up the things that you've talked about. How could you not? Whatever the time is, whatever it takes. And that's why I want to bring back up my experience as a child protection attorney. It was court 8 to 7. If it was juvenile truancy court, sometimes it would go till 10 o'clock at night, and you would have to go home because the next day it would be a whole new slate of children deserving of your attention, and 300 pages of reports and injury photos and updates and people who were and people who weren't getting it. And it was heartbreaking, and it was every bit as important as the time commitment that you're asking. So I've done it. Thankfully, I can also tell you that I largely cleared my schedule as a part-time MBA student, and I've got 7 years to complete that. And if that doesn't work out, if that has to go, what could possibly be more important than the children in the community right here in Rockford, Illinois? You've heard it, and I said I was going to keep repeating it. I love this community. I like the positivity that I see and the willingness to engage. I like the direction of the strategic plan. I want to make sure that we have long-term stability with teacher contracts, that the employees of the school district feel valued, responsible, and accountable. No, there's no problem with the time commitment. With or without the box lunch, I suppose. I want to be done so that everybody has a chance to talk.
Thank you. June?
Well, I'm at the point in my life where my son is 15, almost 16, and becoming more self-sufficient and not needing me as much. Besides that, I have a wonderful support system. My parents have always been his daycare, and as they age, when he's with them, I kind of feel like they're watching him, but he's watching them, that sort of thing. So I have that going on. I work for a wonderful family-owned business and am good friends with my boss and the president of our company, and they're very relaxed, and I kind of come and go if I need to for whatever reason. But I do, of course, work full-time. As far as the workload goes, if you know or have been a member of the Gifted Academy at Auburn High School, you know something about homework. And so I did survive that and survived college, of course, and I'm one of those kids that my parents never had to ask me, is your homework done? I would come home and get after the homework. My mother would say to me, want to stay home tomorrow and we'll play hooky? I'd say, no, I'm going to school, you know. I would never consider showing up to a class without my homework prepared. I would be mortified. That's just my nature. So as far as the workload and the time constraints, I think I have no problem.
Thank you. Terry?
In answer to that, first of all, I am semi-retired. I'm old enough to get Social Security now. So I have taken a back seat a little bit to my business in financial services. I do work with all my old clients, but I haven't been taking on a lot of new clients. But as far as working hard, I think I am the happiest when I'm working hard. As far as going through paperwork, that has never stopped me. I probably, if the person would come into my home during any time of the week, they'll see me late at night going through something to just get a better understanding of something. I currently just took on a learning Spanish at RBC, so I wanted to enhance myself that way. But I think just working with the students, bringing to us, to the board, my desire to have everyone understand every student, whatever their social economic background, whatever their racial background, where their birthplace is. By going into that area, it's not work. It's what I love to do. And anybody that knows me, and that's one thing that I do know is that a lot of people do know me in the community. I don't have to worry about will they know me later and will I show up, because I'm already showing up at their at different activities, and I tutor, etc. So no, yes, I do have the time. And as far as I have always had to juggle different community involvement, and sometimes that's what it takes. But I am lucky to have a child who has already gone through the system. And in fact, we're at the zero. So
We just hit the zero.
I'll say, I want to say my son yesterday got his driver's license.
Okay, great.
So that has, yes, let's give him a hand.
Good. Okay.
But that has freed me up in a lot of space.
Hey, thank you, Terry.
You can drive now.
So we are at the end of our allotted time, so you guys can relax. We have no more questions for you. I'm going to, we're now going to move on then to closing statements for each candidate, and you'll have 2 minutes to give a closing statement, and then we'll move on to community comments. So let's see, Roger, I think you go first this time. You can have up to 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Two minutes isn't enough. I think I've brought my skill set, the analytical side, the ability to analyze, summarize, and understand, to be a voice and an advocate, to bring my experience growing up with teachers, administrators, my child welfare background on both the legal side, my volunteer work. I want to stress again that I'm not a politician, and I'm here because I think everybody should be. And if the skill set you think can be of use, then I absolutely have the time and the commitment. I think everybody here has spoken eloquently, and I echo most of their sentiments. Appointed or not, at least I've had the opportunity that somebody on the news will see that there's somebody that believes in Rockford, believes in the public education system, is willing to face the challenges head on, will not back down from the fact that the financials are of a great magnitude, who won't back down because it's terrifying to make decisions that involve children. Somebody that's been hardened with experience, somebody who's capable, willing, able, somebody who's civic-minded, somebody who's in it for the long term, somebody who's not looking to move on, somebody who recognizes the importance. I think over the course that I've given you the evidence, you need to make a decision with relation to me. So I thank you for the time and the opportunity. I thank the other candidates for being willing to show up here today, to put themselves on the line, and to have that openness and vulnerability that I was talking about. I want to focus on the upcoming 5-year plan and the negotiations, because those are the things that'll run out the rest of the term. And I think that even if that's as far as I get, that my skill set at the crossroads that Rockford is at this time, in this place, that I am the best candidate.
Thank you, Roger. June.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to apply for the position and for letting me be a part of this process. One more thing that I'd like you to know about me is that I am a single parent by choice. My son is adopted. I was his foster mother from the time he was 6 months old. It took us a little over 2 years to get through the whole process of adoption. I have seen the foster system from the very root bottom, and have appreciation for children, and I suppose that's what I want to leave you with, is that I'm here for the kids. I want to do what's best for them, and that's what is always in the back of my mind.
Thank you. Terry.
Once again, thank you all for allowing us to come here today and do this whole process, and being willing to have an open mind during the process. And as far as in closing, I do have a strong diversified background in child care, from preschool all the way up through adulthood. I have tutored, I have mentored children, I have worked with children in situations that are very poor situations, and it wasn't my job. It was my calling to work with students which is a big difference. And I have been involved with the community in just working with family and challenges such as domestic violence and low-income constraints, finding jobs for people who need jobs. And I have been a leader in the community and organizations. And I have, of course, experience in fiscal management and working with families with financial constraints because of my financial business. And of course, because I am an engineer, I am detail-oriented and analytical at that aspect. But what I want to leave you with is I truly believe that quality education is important for every child. It doesn't matter what their socioeconomic background is, their special needs, their racial makeup, their place of birth. Everybody deserves this kind of quality, world-class education. And I want to commit to doing that for the children because Rockford, many things have happened and it has been very good, but we have room for improvement. And one thing I know is working with the students is that the students today are our Rockford tomorrow. They're going to be our clerks, our bank tellers, our government, our mayor, in fact. And if we have to do it, get a quality education for them, but we're also doing it for ourselves.
Thank you,
because it's
Terry.
Rockford.
Diana?
Each winning team is comprised of different components. I'm the missing link that your team needs. I have vast community experience. I'm a passionate advocate for children. My core focus is educating children, all children. My strengths are my gender. You only have one female on the board. And age, I bring that baby boomer experience to the board. But most of all is the fact that I am a servant, and I have that servant mentality to be able to serve not only the children, but all of our stakeholders, whether it's the teachers, the administrators, working collaboratively with the other board members, but most of all, the taxpayers who are employers. So, as I said, I feel that all of the candidates are worthy, but I feel that I'm the missing link that you need to complete your circle to be a winning team. And I thank you for this opportunity to address you and to present my credentials. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Okay, we will now then move on to the petitions and communication portion of our meeting when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communication portion of our agenda. According to our board policy, the public comments is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you'll be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes. It's not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. I will call you to the front. We have 3 speakers that have signed up. There will be a clock on the wall, so Laura will help you with your timing. So we thank you for your interest and your cooperation. And our first public speaker is Janie Wilson-Cook, to be followed by Faye Marcus. And you'll need to turn that button on the microphone till the red light comes on. There you go.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I knew all those years as a tech implementer would come in handy.
Okay.
My name is Janie Wilson-Cook. I live in Subdistrict A. Mr. Dixon is my representative.
Okay.
And I've been volunteering the district since the late 80s. I wrote the demographic report for the ad hoc committee of 1988, which the board ignored and was under federal control for the next 11 years. I also wrote the first technology plan for Washington Communication Academy. And I have been very involved with a lot of education. Both of my children are proud Auburn High School graduates, one in gifted, one in Kappa. And I officially retired from being ad hoc committed to death with the school district about 7 or 8 years ago when my son graduated. But I want to speak in support of Terry Scheer because, to tell you the truth, I know way too much about this district. I've even worked for it. And when she told me that she wanted to be on the school board, frankly, I said, I think that's a terrible idea because it is the most thankless job in the entire area. The hours are horrible. There's amounts of minutia that no person could possibly get through. And no matter what decision you make, nobody likes it. And I just want to tell you, I warned her. And she persisted. And I will tell you, I have volunteered with her on a lot of the forums that she's had, bringing women to the trades and domestic violence forums. I'm on her local government committee with the League of Women Voters. And she's the velvet glove. She can go through all that minutia, and she can help you make a good decision. And I just want you to know that.
Thank you, Jeannie. Faye, I think it's Marcis, to be followed by Mel Champion.
Hi, I'm Faye Marcus, and I'm here to talk in support of Terry Scheer to be on the school board. I haven't known Terry for very long, but the times that I've known her, her energy and the way in which she approaches problems just amazes me. She's very collaborative. She has been involved in all kinds of planning different kinds of activities and forums to help women and children. And I think that she would be a wonderful asset to the school board. Terry follows through with anything that she's given. You know that when Terry is going to do something, it gets done, and it gets done in a wonderful, collaborative way.
Thank you, Faye. Mel Champion, then.
Hello, board members. I know
Hi.
some of you. Today I'm here to toot the horn of Terry. Sure. I'm speaking on behalf of Women's March Rockford. It's an organization that I represent. But not only that, I'm here representing my own 3 children that attend RPS 205. I have 2 at Maud Johnson. Great school, great principal, Amber Miller. And then I have 1, my son is at Marshall. So I'm here on their behalf. I'm here on the behalf of all the kids in this district. And Terry's here because she believes in every single kid in this district, particularly that in Sub-District G. So I trust Terry with my kids. I trust Terry with those that she's going to represent in Sub-District G. Terry has dedicated her entire life to advocating for children and their parents. And, you know, I'm not going to say anything bad about this board because you guys seriously do a great job. And I know that sometimes there's bickering, and I know that you have to come through a lot. And I know that Terry can collaborate with anyone about anything, and she's the peacemaker. And she doesn't go out there to the community and she doesn't talk to them, she listens to them. And I think that's so important when you're trying to get a job on the school board, not to talk to people, but to listen to them. And I guarantee you that if you went out today and you talked to anyone in Sub-District G and you said, what do you know about Terry Shearer? They're going to tell you exactly what they know about Terry Shearer, and they're not going to say, who's Terry Shearer?
Thank you, Mel. Your time's up.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay. Again, thank you all for being here, and I'm going to take a motion and a second now for the board to adjourn and go into closed to discuss the candidate interview results then.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Dixon. All those in favor say aye. Do you have a question?
Sure.
Okay.
Everybody knows what the expectation is. We go back.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. I'm light impaired today.
Okay. Okay.
Will you then call?
I
Or
will.
will we come back
it
into
will be-
open? I mean,
No,
just so
it'll be my
everybody knows.
responsibility to individually contact all the candidates.
So you don't have to sit and wait.
Right, you don't have to sit and wait. I will call you. I think we have everyone's phone number. Okay, Laura has those, so. Okay, so we will reconvene in the back and close then. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, 2 minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
For being here.